beautiful day on Twitch.tv, a beautiful day for a live stream. Won't you be my? Could you be my? It's a beautiful day on this website today, a beautiful day for a chat stream. Won't you be my? Won't you be my? I don't know the bridge part in the middle, but I love here being with you. Let's all sit down and have fun tonight, because that's what we do. It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a live stream. Could you be my? Won't you be my? Please, won't you be my chatters? Howdy, chat. It's lovely to see you again. My name's RuneMeisterKris, and tonight we're going to have an archaeological story time! Hooray! Let's do some more of this Fred Rogers music. Maybe I'll just put the whole song again on in the background. Yeah, let's do that. I have the instrumental version, so we'll just do that. Well, everybody, I certainly appreciate you coming in tonight for Mr. RuneMeister's Neighborhood, where we're going to be reading this book called Archaeologists Dig for Clues. It's a storybook that helps teach kids all about the magic and mystery of what it's like to be an archaeologist, and it does it using actual scientific facts, data, and methods, and not so much the treasure hunting that we have come to expect from a lot of things. I'm very excited to read this with all of you tonight because I haven't really read it myself yet. I've just flipped through it and been wildly impressed. So I think it's going to be a fun time kind of critiquing what this individual, Kate Duke, thinks of archaeologists. Although, to be fair, from my understanding, from what I've heard, this author, her husband is a scientist. And she legit does her homework. The special thanks page has four different archaeologists and museum workers, plus an entire archaeology department at the University of Connecticut. So I'm assuming that there's been a bit of work done on making this viable in terms of an archaeological source. So I am excited to see what sort of cool stuff we can come up with on this front. Psst. Do you want to see my greatest treasure? It's your subscription to this channel. That's right, every person who subscribes to my channel brings me one step closer to being able to bring more archaeology, gaming, and meme content to your screens. So go ahead, scroll down, and click that subscribe button today, and you too can find your wildest treasure. So, without any further ado, I guess, let's get down to reading to our little fireside read here. Might as well, right? I wish I had an armchair. That was on my list of things to get for the streamer, like get an armchair to put back there with so that I could sit there. Stupidly excited for story time, though. Yeah, me too. Unironically, I am very excited for this story time. I think this is going to be super fun and silly. The book is not terribly long, but dang, is it dense for a kid's book? And you'll see what I mean when I start showing you guys the pictures. On the title page, they're all driving out, and there's a little kid in the back who's like, "Yuck, dust!" And I'm like, mood? Mood much, child? You get it. Congratulations. I'm trying to think if I should I guess I should try and do it like this. All right, here we go. On our summer vacation, we got to go on a dig with our friend Sophie. She's a scientist, an archaeologist. She hunts for places where people once lived. Over time, these places have gotten buried. Sophie digs them up. It's called excavating. She found a good place to excavate near where we lived. And now the fun begins. I'm just going to dig a little. I don't want to mess up my new sneakers. Oh, well, that's your first mistake, child. You don't bring new sneakers on a project. Who the heck do you think you are? She looks like she's 12 or something. I'll let it slide. The dig was in a cornfield. The farmers who owned the field had uncovered some prehistoric spear points with their plow. When she saw the points, Sophie asked for permission to hunt for more clues. That's actually good. Permission is always extremely necessary. And then you can see down here, they even point out the differences between larger spear points, right? Larger spear points and much smaller arrowheads. This one here has got a corner notched, meaning those little indents in the corners there. It's a corner notched spear point. So that's pretty good stuff. How do archaeologists decide where to dig? My boss tells me. They look at things that builders, farmers, sometimes even animals have uncovered accidentally. They look for old buildings, ruins, unusual mounds, or sunken spots in the land. They look at pictures of the land taken from airplanes. These can show where old roads or walls were. They look at old books and maps for clues to buried sites. Sophie shows us the test pits she had dug to test the ground for other interesting buried stuff. In some of the pits, she had found more spear points. They were in a layer of dirt that was darker than the dirt above it. The dark earth was important. It was a sign that people had lived on that spot long ago. That's true. That's true. If the dirt, so let me clarify that. The dark dirt is important when it's a certain type of dark dirt, because sometimes you can get darker subsoils, levels that are darker than the surface ones above it, that aren't necessarily important. What you're looking for are like out of place dark patch, like dark spots, or like if you have an intact A layer, right? Like the primary dirt layer, and you have a dark band in the middle of that A layer and you have intact A under and above it, that's important. That's an important thing. Why does the ground people live on turn dark? Well, because people have walked on it, cooked on it, spilled things, burned things, peed, spit, thrown up. Good Lord, Sophie. In other words, the dirt gets dirty. Oh, my poor snakers! Can we talk about this lady over here? Sophie needed to know how old the dig site was, so she sent some pieces of burnt wood from the dark dirt layer to the archaeology lab. A carbon dating test, which measured chemicals in the wood, showed that it was 6,000 years old. That meant the people who had burned the wood in their campfires had lived in the Archaic era. We didn't know too much about that time period, but we figured we'd find out once we got to the dig. Yeah, timeline checks out. 6,000 years in the United States. Probably, I mean, they don't specify where they're digging, but it looks like it's probably somewhere like mid-central US, like Midwest, something like that. In which case, yeah, that tracks. It's probably Ohio. There's a very good chance it's Ohio. So much archaeology happens in Ohio. Archaic's pretty old. That's a good site. In terms of archaeology in the States, it usually goes like historic era, which is like, our stuff. And then there's like, I think they have like a pre-contact, like a weird transitional pre-contact period, which is like just before the historic period begins. Then there's the woodland period, like late and early woodland. And then there's the archaic period, late and early. And then it goes back to like the paleo period. And that's the old stuff. Paleo stuff is extremely neat and extremely rare. I went through that whole thing where I'm sitting here talking about all that junk, and I swear to God, they have it. They have it on the bottom of the page. This is what I'm talking about. This is a good book. I just talked about all that junk, and then I looked down like, all right, where did I leave off? Oh, wait, it's exactly what I just described. That's it. They're calling it the Mississippian era for that transitional period that I was talking about. Why does so much archaeology happen in Ohio? It's a combination of things. Number one, in antiquity, that part of the country was just so nice. So how like the Midwest is so full of farmlands, and that's like the shtick, is that it's all farmlands. That's why there's so much archaeology there, because the Native American, like the indigenous folks, the Native Americans, also could grow a lot of stuff there. So they lived there because it was a very nice place to live, especially as you got a little bit more west, more towards like the St. Louis area. That's when you would get just like tremendous amounts of commerce and trade and stuff. The Mississippian culture that I was talking about there, it's named that because of the Mississippi having a lot of very big stuff there. Brishali, you're right. Also, Ohio does have a lot of mound sites, which is just like the mounds were built up either as like funerary monuments, burials, or as just cultural sites of importance. And mound builders were very big in that area. So they tend to have a lot of stuff around there. That's why you have S-tier Cahokia. That's why you have legally required to be called S-tier Cahokia. Agriculture processes tend to churn up artifacts, and they're easy to see on the fresh soil. Yes, another very good point. As they said at the beginning of this book, they dug up that spear point because the farmer plowed it and found it and then called it in. And so the archaeologist lady went out to check it out. That's a lot. When we go out, when I do a lot of work in the Midwest, you can even do pedestrian surveys in some parts of the country, depending on the weather and the ground conditions, which is basically like if a farmer has come through and they've disked up their ground to prepare it for the fields or something, and the whole ground is all churned up and kind of blah, 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 rather than going out and digging holes, you can just do pedestrian surveys where you just line up a poop ton of archaeologists and you just walk over and just pick stuff up off the ground. Well, you don't pick it up off the ground. You flag it and then you mark it in and you dig holes where you find stuff. You go over and you just kind of look for things on the surface rather than digging holes in the grids and everything. Oh, here, and then they bring up a last good point over here, saying, of course, archaeologists don't study only ancient times. Someday, archaeologists of the future will study us. I'm sure they'll find us very attractive. I've actually talked about this before, about how I don't think future archaeologists should study us. Not because I don't think that we're important, but because I don't think they need to. Nothing that they dig up is going to be more informative than what they probably already have recorded on us, either through the internet or through libraries or through other sorts of archives and records. I can almost assure people, I think that our archaeological cutoff should be World War II. Like anything newer than World War II should be counted as history and kept and studied as a very neat thing, as like an antique or just like a neat little, thing. But I don't think that we need to be studying it and recording it in the same way that we record like Native American or settlement era stuff. Disagree on that? Totally fine. So do most states, which is why the law is still 50 years. I had one guy tell me World War I had one guy said, I don't even want to go past World War I was like, oh, okay, that's even too far back for me. This is very big, and it's all one like mural page. A lot of people were helping Sophie excavate. Some were archaeologists. Some were volunteers, like us. They'd really made a big hole. It wasn't just an ordinary round hole either. It had smooth, straight sides, and it was all divided up with string into squares. Archaeologists always dig square holes. That's because they're scientists. Their digging is scientific digging, neat and organized. And being organized makes it easier for them to keep records of where they make each find. I absolutely dig circular holes. I think that what they're talking about is that this is a phase 2 or a phase 3 excavation, right? This is this is a advanced bit of stuff going on here, right? This is a more thorough excavation than what we do typically. But I think that circular, like there's a lot of states that circular holes for their initial phase 1 shovel testing is not only allowed, but in the guidelines. What do we do first? Put on sunblock and bug spray. Very important. Yo, Sophie out here spitting facts. Let me tell you, real. Bridgeshala will attest to that. She's out here on this job pulling ticks off herself left and right. Bug spray is stupid important. We'd like 3 of your nicest squares to work in, please. I think you'd like 4D, 9G, and 3M. Can we also talk about how this girl has been insufferable this entire time? Why did they, okay, you know what? She's probably not that bad. It's fine. One thing I will say, I'm a little salty that there's so many volunteers on this site. So look. Confirmed archaeologists. We have Sophie over here. Sophie, confirmed archaeologist. We have this guy, unnamed, but it says right there next to his thing, it says archaeologist. This lady right here, archaeologist. This guy over here, he's not wearing his shoes. He is absolutely an archaeologist. This one's an archaeologist. So we have 4 confirmed archaeologists on this site. And what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 volunteers plus 7, 8, 9 total plus the dog. over here. A little salty there's so many volunteers. I'll be honest, like volunteer work is a great way to get involved in local archaeology. I'm only salty because they don't pay archaeologists enough and they outsource it to archaeology is not immune to free child labor. They're learning. Call up the Boy Scouts. We can get them their archaeology merit badge. Back to the trenches, children. That's why archaeologists have whips. It's to keep the children in the trenches. God damn it. Oh, God. I gotta start putting up views are my own stipulation on all my social medias. The children yearn for the mines. Do archaeologists not wear shoes? When you're in deep testing trenches like this, the reason why you wouldn't wear shoes... So when you wear shoes, a lot of times you're wearing boots when you're doing archaeology, and the boots are going to have very intense bottoms. Like they're going to have the ridges, the tractions. What do you call them? Not cleats. You know what I'm talking about. You got the things on the bottom of your foot that make it so that you don't... Like, you're not wearing ice skates. And anyway, they leave big marks and indents in the soil that you're digging in. You walk through it, it can, like, pock things up. It can, like, pop out bits of dirt. Or if there's, like, a rock or an artifact or something that's embedded in there, it might pop it out. You wear bare feet because your feet are going to leave less intense indentations, and they're going to be more... You're going to be able to identify a footprint versus something else. It's softer. It's easier on the dirt. So, yeah, if you're... particularly if you're doing what he's doing, which if you eagle-eyed viewers want to take a look, he's got that grid up right there, and what he's doing is he's actually, there we go, so those little circles and marks that he's got all over it, he's actually drawing in, like this rock down here, he's drawing in the things that are popping up on the surface of the ground as they're digging down. You can see some more of them over here, and what he's doing is he's kind of like laying out the level and pointing out all of the things that are on the surface of the level. I'm getting way too hung up. Let's zippity-doo-dah through this. I don't think we're even halfway. We couldn't wait to do a little scientific digging ourselves. Maybe we'd excavate some buried treasure, or an underground tomb, or a mummy. But when we looked at the stuff Sophie had already collected, we were confused. There were a couple of spear points, but the rest just looked like a bunch of rocks and pebbles and dirt. It sure didn't look like treasure. And that was when we discovered the truth about archaeology. You're trash men. That's right. One person's trash is another man's treasure, and what we do is basically way too late garbage collection. Hey, let's go. The truth was a shock. Archaeologists hardly ever find treasure in the United States. They aren't even trying to. They're interested in the ordinary things that belonged to ordinary people. They even care about the stuff that people of the past dropped or lost or threw away. In other words, garbage! Archaeologists love ancient garbage. Lucky for us, garbage this old doesn't smell. Thanks, I feel much better now. Okay, fun fact, when I was doing my field school in Italy, we were actually, we were digging up an old Etruscan complex on the top of a hill in Tuscany, and we came upon a layer in one of the trenches which had this very distinct kind of like bluish tint to it. It was very unusual, and everybody was super confused. At least all the kids were, like kids, we were college kids, students, all the students were a little confused, and it just had this pungent odor, this dank, nasty stank about it. And what we realized, or rather what we were told, is that it was poop soil. It was like a latrine, and the over time, all of the literal shit had just like bled into the soil. It fused with it, made it like this hyper, like plants were going bonkers. That soil came up, and the trees, like they grew eyes that just like watered, and mouths that just began to froth because they were like, I want that. It was like crazy dirt that they were dealing with, but it was smelled so bad, and we had to dig through it like regular dirt. And I've seen it since then. I dug up a latrine recently in a city during a phase 3, and we were digging some really cool stuff out of the latrine, and sometimes you run into it in there. Anyway, yeah, so garbage and poop is what we dig up professionally for everybody who wants to get into this business. They even have a special name for it. Midden. When they study it and test it, they can find out all kinds of things about the people it once belongs to. So archaeologists are more like detectives than treasure hunters. They're trying to uncover the whole story of how people lived in the past as truly as they can. So middens. Middens are that kind of makes it sound like everything we dig up is a midden, and that's not it. A midden is like a very specific collection. Like you'll get shell middens, which are basically like sites that you dig up that are literally just like 4-inch thick layers of just discarded shells from like river clams or something, that they all just like, that's where we throw our shells, everybody. Hey, everyone here. It's like when you go to the Buffalo Wild Wings and everyone just like puts a single plate on the table and you're like, yo, dog, throw your bones in this plate. That's a midden. You just made a chicken midden when you're making the bone plate at Buffalo Wild Wings. So keep that in the noggin and throw that out the next time you're blasted off your keister watching the Chiefs or something at a Buffalo Wild Wings. Everybody pass the midden. I got my chicken wings. What would your garbage tell about you? The average kid's wastebasket. Has cool clothes. Eats too much chocolate. Is a little bit messy. Drinks banana soda? What the is banana soda? Is anyone in chat drinking banana soda? Be honest with me right now. But if you are, I'm banning you. Who drinks banana soda? Like, look, I don't mind banana flavor. I don't mind bananas. You want a banana soda. Okay, that implies that you're not actively drinking banana sodas. That sounds weird. Look, I'm pretty open when it comes to trying new stuff, right? I eat a lot of weird shit. I feel bad. I'm reading a kid's book and I'm like potty mouthing it left and right here. It's okay. It's okay. Views are my own. Anyway, Sophie's dirt wasn't just dirt. It had bits of 6,000-year-old archaic garbage in it. There were little pieces of bones and shells. They showed what animals the archaic people hunted, and even littler specks of black charcoal showed what plants they ate. Those specks once had been seeds and nutshells. They had fallen into the fire and burned while being roasted for somebody's dinner one day, thousands of years ago. Down here, they've got dirt and little bits of charcoal. Charcoal's really fun. So charcoal, when you find it, the reason, like, sometimes I get it confused with slate and stuff, but the way that you can tell that charcoal is charcoal, or like really badly decomposing sandstone, the way that you can tell charcoal is if you take it and you like smush it between your fingers, it's gonna smear and leave just like this massive black coating on you, right? So that's how you can tell something's charcoal and not just like a rock, which will just like break up and crumble away or whatever. Sophie's rocks weren't just rocks either. They were artifacts. An artifact is a thing, anything at all, that people have made. Someone in archaic times had turned those rocks into artifacts by making them into tools and weapons. To make a sharp blade, archaic people sharpened a rock by knocking off flakes around the edges with another rock. It's called knapping. Learning how to do it helped me understand how archaic people lived. So archaeologists sometimes pretend to be the people they're studying? Cool! Very important point of note. Never, 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 ever, ever flint knap in a site. They have to be at home in a lab or something. Never flint knap at a site, because then you're going to find your own flakes and think it's part of the site. There is no way to determine whether or not a flake was made today or 6,000 years ago unless you know it. I mean, sometimes you can tell. Sometimes there are ways to tell if you look through the light. Some people are better at it than others. I'm not very good at it, and I don't think that people are very... I think that it's a very, very hard skill to pick up. But typically, yeah, these flakes are going to come out of the ground as sharp as if you had just made it. They don't erode away or anything like that. They don't like rough out or round out their edges. It's going to look exactly the same. So don't ever flint knap in a site. But they do have a picture here of some cool stone tools. So we're going to go through this. We have our modern day axe and the stone equivalent. A lot of these are going to look familiar to you gamer gods because, yeah, they're very similar to like this kind of stone tools that you're going to see in like Rust or Ark or any other survival game. Anyway. Then there's knives. Knives look a lot different. Really, it's just a rock with a single sharp edge. Drills. Drills are really fun. They do kind of look very similar to how they do now, but yeah, it's like a little... Or sometimes people will take the stick and they'll go... Like you're flossing it. And then food processors, which is like a little bowl where you'd put the seeds in and grinding tool. It's like a mortar and pestle. You make it like a mortar and pestle. Artifacts and middens are clues to the past, and like detectives at a crime scene, archaeologists at a dig try not to break or disturb anything that might be evidence. They use tools that can excavate finds gently, and they never ever take a find away from the dig without first marking down exactly where it came from. Knowing where something was found can help explain why it was there and what it was used for. That, folks, is called context, which is why if you ever see somebody on TikTok, Instagram Reels, or Reddit, or wherever else doing arrowhead hunting or whatever, where they're going out and they're just kind of digging stuff and finding neat stuff, they're wrong. Finally, we were ready to start digging. Sophie gave us each a tiny little trowel to work with. No shovels. Archaeologists use tools that can excavate artifacts gently. She told us to scrape up the dirt lightly, taking off only the tiniest layer at a time. After that, we learned how to screen the dirt we'd collected, to be sure we hadn't missed any tiny artifacts or middens. All right, this is very hyper-specific to Phase 2s and 3s, right? We absolutely use shovels. I dig with shovels every day. I have pulled out my trowel 2 times this calendar year. It's like, it's not something you run into all the time. When you're doing that type of work, yeah, they're 100% right. You're literally just gonna be scraping dirt. You're just raking dirt. That's your job. But if you are like mostly doing archaeology, and even for them getting to that sort of depth, if they're working for a client and they have a time frame, you bet your keister you're using shovels. Academic digs, they get the luxury of time that we don't always have in the CRM field. An air pump blows away dirt without even touching the artifact. Oh, that's actually a goated idea. I have a little air pump upstairs from Blue Eyes White Dragon, one of his toys. I'm totally taking that on a dig. Oh, this is my favorite. A scoop made from a milk jug. Yo, this is so legit. Like, shovels, whack. Milk jugs cut in half? Yes, please? If I can make a tool out of something that's not meant to be a tool, I'll do it. I literally just said, oh, I have a little toy inflator upstairs that I can use to do this. And then, oh, we have this milk jug that we can do this with. Look, this guy's like, oh, yeah. Here's your dentist tools. Metal and bamboo picks. And it's like, look at all these things like paintbrushes and tools that are not really archaeologist tools, but that we use because we're really good at making stuff out of nothing. We dig up the trash of the past using the trash of the present because we are trash people. We worked for hours and got really hot and sweaty. Truth. Then finally we found our first artifact. It was an archaic awl. An awl is like a needle without the hole at the end. An archaic person had probably used it to sew pieces of leather into clothes. Eureka! So, how to make an archaic owl. You have a stone knife over a bone, break a splinter off of a thin bone, rub it on a whetstone. You gotta pronounce it like Stewie pronounces Cool Whip. Until it's nice and good and sharp, and then you have yourself an awl. We held it in our hands and thought about how no one had touched it for all of those thousands of years until now. Congratulations! A true is small. If we'd been using shovels, we might have smashed it. Yeah. Congratulations! Now instead of only finding 1 artifact, you found 10. That's gonna look way better on the report. You guys found 10 artifacts on that dig? Man, what a successful dig! You did it! Next, we found a row of dark spots on the ground. We didn't think they were important, but Sophie did. She knew right away that they were marks left by wooden posts that had held up an archaic person's house. We wondered if spots could be artifacts too, but Sophie said a find like this is called a feature. So yeah, artifacts are objects. Features are like... You can tell, right? Like, just the fact that there's a distinction between them. Like, you guys get what I'm talking about here, right? A feature is a post hole. A feature is a fire pit. A feature is a soil change indicating possible habitation, right? That's what a feature is. A feature is like an artifact because it's something made by people, but it's also a place. Roads, buildings, swimming pools, cemeteries, and parking lots are all features. Archaeologists like finding features because they're good clues to where things happened. Our feature, the post hole spots, told us where a family had once lived. The next thing we worked on was the coolest of all. It was a grave with a skeleton in it. A dog skeleton. All right, this book is immediately trash. It has a dead dog in it. Button it up, folks. What's that website? Does the dog die? The dog dies in Archaeologists Dig for Clues. Okay, let them know. Unbelievable. A pebble with a hole drilled in it lay by the dog's neck, and under the skeleton there was charcoal from a fire. We wondered if the pebble had once hung on a collar, and why the dog had been buried in ashes. It was mysterious and spooky to think about. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! The dog! Oh, this is so sad! Oh no, why is the dog sad? Now I'm sadder! I'm sadder than I was before because the dog is so sad. Oh, his buddy. They don't understand. They're just dogs. They don't get it. Excavating a skeleton is tricky. You can't let any of the bones move out of place. Sophie showed us a special way to do it. First, we dig all around the skeleton. Need help? Then, we build a box around it. This foam will harden and hold the bones steady. Next, we push this metal sheet underneath. It'll never work. Leave it to the cat to be the hater. They're over here, they're like doing all this work, and the cat is like, yo, you guys suck. Cat's like, hey, do better, scrubs. Cats throughout history have been our biggest haters. That's why the Egyptians revered them so much. They were like, God, praise the cats, we fear them. And finally lift the whole thing up, dirt and all. Perfect, it worked. Oh, yeah, suck it, cat. It was late when we finished. Time to stop digging, Sophie said, but not time to stop working. We measured our finds and drew them and photographed them and bagged them and labeled them. Yeah, sometimes you leave the photographing and some of that other stuff to the lab people just because ain't nobody got time for that. Oh, they're using paper artifact bags? Ugh. Paper artifact bags? I mean, for bigger stuff you could do that, but you gotta have the plastic bags because then you could zip them up so that the stuff doesn't fall out. Why would you do a paper bag? Unless you're gonna rubber band it at the top or something, but then it just looks like drugs. Like, don't do that. Just get little plastic Ziploc bags. They make little plastic Ziploc bags with labels on the front. You can just write on them. It's perfect. Next, Sophie handed us all clipboards and pencils. We were finding out fast that archaeology isn't just excavating. You have to be as careful about keeping records as you are about digging. We wrote down exactly what we'd found and exactly where we'd found it. How do you spell skeleton? For all the Brits saying it the way they do. Sophie marked everything on the archaeological map she was making of the whole dig. When we looked at it, we could see why it mattered where you found the stuff as much as what the stuff was. Every square on the map matched a square in the dig. The map showed us that our house had been part of a tiny village. We saw where each house had been and where the villagers had cooked their food and made their tools and dumped their garbage. The map made it easy to imagine what the village might have looked like. It was a picture put together from the tiniest clues, specks of dirt and stones and bones. We thought it was good detective work. So that's what that site might have looked like. Very cool site. Very cool site. A good peek into what life was like. We were through at the dig for the day. Next, Sophie took us to the archaeology lab. We met a lot of scientists there. Each one was an expert in a different subject, and all of them were working with Sophie to try and figure out the meaning of the things she'd found. Yeah, archaeologists cannot help but micro specialize. Like, bro, it is intense. I mean, I did Scandinavian Viking Age runestones, which is a pretty niche. But here are some of the examples that they give down here, right? They're a little bit more broad than what I was talking about. They've got an archaeobotanist who studies plant remains to figure out what they were eating and how their diets and everything were. You've got a physical anthropologist who looks at the remains of humans to determine, like, development and evolution, all that sort of stuff. You've got an archaeozoologist who studies animal remains. And now I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, Rune, you scream at us all the time that animals are paleontologists and people are archaeologists. What are you talking about, archaeozoologist? You're freaking me out. Please help. Gods. And to you, I will say, yeah, I lied. People who study animal remains solely within the context of how people interacted with them. So that dog burial is an archaeozoologist territory because it is animal remains that had human interaction done to them. The bones were only put there and buried there because of humans. Other examples are like mammoth bones with signs of butchering on them, right? Mammoths are paleontology. Mammoth bones that have human butchering marks on them could constitute archaeology. So it's a fine semantics line. The lab was packed with artifacts and samples waiting to be studied. Sophie said archaeologists spend even more time in the lab than they do in the field. I made soup from the kinds of plants archaic people ate. Want a taste? Oh, okay, so she's doing experimental archaeology. That's actually unironically fun. Experimental archaeology is just doing things that we thought ancient people did the way that we thought they did it and seeing if it worked. Like flint knapping is experimental archaeology. And then this guy over here with the dog. I sculpted this after measuring and studying another dog skeleton from this area. So the dog we found might have looked like this one too? The dog down here looks like my Aunt Snippy. Is it Snippy? Sniffy. We helped Sophie count the bags from our dig to make sure none had been left behind. We wet-screened samples of dirt and cleaned artifacts and measured them, and put them into plastic bags and labeled them. Last of all, we entered all the facts about them into a computer. Our finds would never get lost. That was for sure. Now, Sophie and her team could study them together with the other clues from the dig, and maybe get some answers to their questions about what it was like to live in archaic times. Look at that computer! When was the last time you saw a tube monitor? I mean, I guess in an archaeological lab, yeah, that makes sense. They never get funding. They wouldn't have the funding to buy new computers. All right, and here we are, folks. We'd done a lot of hard work, but we were ready for more tomorrow. There are all kinds of archaeological clues out there just waiting to be discovered, and you never know what you might find in one square hole. What do you do if you find something in your backyard or wherever? Check 1. Grab a shovel, start digging, mess up the site, mix up the dirt, break artifacts left and right. Or show your find to an expert at a museum or local archaeology society. Bring a map to show exactly where you found it, or call your state archaeologists. If they decide to do a dig, you might get to watch or even help out. That's the end of the story. The end, right? The end. Boy, chat. What a beautiful story that was about the methods, theories, and practicality of archaeology. Thank you all so much for joining me on this mystical journey as we learned a bit about what it's like to actually be an archaeologist from a book that wasn't actually bad at all and actually had a pretty decent understanding of what it was doing. So, thank you, Ms. D. Well, that's it, I guess.